Good morning and welcome to RTHK's Hong Kong Today. I'm Janice Wong.
And I'm Mike Weeks. Coming up, thousands of police will be out on the streets of Hong Kong to ensure the 24th anniversary of the handover is not marked by protests. The infection of an airport worker with the Delta strain of COVID-19 has been linked to 3 cases imported from Indonesia. The government says its goal is to meet the highest air quality standards as it sets out its new clear air plan. And in sport, England beat Germany 2-0 to reach the quarter-finals of football's Euro 2020, where they'll meet Ukraine.
An appeals board has upheld the police ban on a march tomorrow to mark the anniversary of the handover. 3 groups had planned to stage the rally, which had been held every year from 1997 to 2019. The July 1st march was also banned last year, a day after the national security law came into force. But thousands of people took to the streets in Causeway Bay, Wan Chai and Tin Hau. They were met by water cannons and tear gas, and over 370 were arrested. Natalie Cheng reports.
The Appeal Board on Public Meetings and Processions cited infection risks posed by COVID-19 in upholding the ban. It described the police ban as reasonable because a mutated strain of coronavirus is causing outbreaks in nearby countries and regions, and Hong Kong's vaccination rate remains low. The board said the infection risks would be high, considering the number of participants expected to join the march, which could last for hours. The League of Social Democrats, Tin Shui Wai Connection and Safe Lantau Alliance wanted to march from Victoria Park to the government's headquarters in Admiralty. Chen Po-ying of the League of Social Democrats said they would instead petition at the flag-raising ceremony at Golden Bohemia Square in Wan Chai on Thursday morning and set up street booths to promote their cause.
Because for a long time, many years, we have to do the same thing on July 1st, and nothing happened. And as far as I remember, there's no police intervention or arrest. Why is there anything different?
The police warned the public not to gather at Victoria Park on that day. Here's Chief Superintendent Steve Zheng.
Police appeals to the public not to participate in any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering, not to advertise or publicize any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering in any other manner. Police adopts a zero-tolerance approach to any illegal acts and takes resolute enforcement actions.
The Civil Human Rights Front, which had organized the march in the past, did not apply for permission to hold the protest this year.
2 men have been arrested in Lam Tin and Tai Po after police seized chemicals that could be used to make explosives. Officers said the pair had made social media posts aimed at inciting hatred and violence, although they stopped short of linking the case directly to tomorrow's anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR. Alec McWhirter is a senior police bomb disposal officer.
The chemicals seized were what we refer to as precursor chemicals. A precursor chemical is a chemical that can be used in the manufacture of homemade explosives. The chemicals that were seized are consistent with the manufacture of gunpowder, a low explosive. The quantity of chemicals seized is consistent with an end product of approximately 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder. 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder could result in a very serious explosion. That this was being considered in a residential building is incredibly reckless.
The police are reportedly set to deploy 10,000 officers across the city tomorrow on what promises to be a muted 24th anniversary of the handover. Many top officials, including Chief Executive Carrie Lam, are in Beijing for the start of lavish celebrations to mark next month's centenary of the founding of the Communist Party. President Xi Jinping yesterday urged its members to forever trust, love and contribute to the party. Mr. Xi, who's also the party's General Secretary, was speaking as he presented medals of the highest honor to 29 party members. Here's Priscilla Ng.
The July 1st medal, announced in 2017 and given out for the first time, is part of President Xi's efforts to shore up the image of the party. Recipients included soldiers, community workers, and professionals in the arts and science. The awards ceremony took place at Beijing's Great Hall of the People with much fanfare and was broadcast live on national television. During the event, the Chinese leader said all party members need to maintain their integrity, conduct themselves in a clean and honest manner, and be forever loyal to the party. He spoke through an interpreter.
All party members must be aware of, observe, and practice the ethics. We must aim to be clean people and do clean deeds. We must devote ourselves wholeheartedly to public duties and maintain the political nature of the party to be clean.
全党同志都要把对马克思主义的信仰、对中国特色社会主义的信念
All comrades must have complete faith in Marxism and socialism with Chinese characteristics and make that their lifelong aspiration. They must forever trust and love the party, keep the people close to their hearts, and dedicate everything to the party and the people, President Xi added. On Thursday, a major ceremony will be held to mark the 100th year since the CCP's founding, when the Chinese leader is expected to make a longer speech to outline his vision for the party's future.
Priscilla Ng there. The number of Hong Kongers who feel proud to be Chinese citizens is now at its highest level in a decade. That's according to a survey by the Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute, which put the figure at 41%. But 55% told the pollsters they don't feel proud to be Chinese. Despite that, people's satisfaction on Beijing's policies here have also increased for a second year running. The Institute's Deputy CEO, Chung Kim-wah, described the results as a bit unexpected. He also told Natalie Cheng that it doesn't mean people are happy with how things are going.
We have to understand that even the situation is improving a little bit, they are all still in the very low level. We have conducted this type of survey for more than 20 years, but we know that in the last 2 years it dropped to the historical low, so it may be a little bit jumping back a little bit, but that doesn't mean that the overall situation of Hong Kong and the overall sentiment of Hong Kong people towards the central government and to the national identity have been becoming positive. That's totally not that matter. As we look into this type of survey, we have to look into the trend. And we know that in the last 10 years, this trend had consistently going down if you look into the long-term trend. And for this year, after several years of going down, it go back a little bit. I think it's normal. And we have to look into maybe some recent action of the government will further jeopardize people's feeling on this area, maybe. I don't know.
What do you make of the result? Is it surprising to see such an increase?
Of course, we don't know the reason behind that. If we look into what had happened most recently, we know that the government is doing all it can to oppress people in Hong Kong, trying to deprive some basic freedom of Hong Kong people. And if we look into other survey we conduct in recent periods, we know that the social indicator and the way people feel about our officials are all nearly the lowest local rank. But because we conduct that poll 1 year previously, so maybe people had not made a very good comparative basis when the time elapsed for more than 1 year. And another speculation is that people, after 2 years of confrontation between the government and the people, and after 1 whole year under the oppressive national security law, some people may have slowly accustomed to the recent scenario. That would make the data seem to be a little bit more when we talk about national pride or that kind of thing. Another reason may come from sampling error from operation. It may skew to the positive side and it emphasize and it magnify the differences.
Dr. Chung Kim-wah speaking there to Natalie Cheng. Health authorities have linked the infection of an airport worker with the Delta variant of COVID-19 to 3 cases imported from Indonesia and say it's no longer regarded as untraceable. The 27-year-old man was Hong Kong's first case of the highly infectious variant. His colleague at another job in a Tai Po mall also came down with the mutant strain. The Centre for Health Protection says he came into contact with the 3 people from Indonesia at an airport specimen collection centre earlier this month. It reported just 1 imported COVID case yesterday, a 43-year-old arrival from Britain. Flights from the UK are banned from tomorrow. Epidemiologist Benjamin Cowling says the Delta variant could be prevalent around the world within months, and he told RTHK that airport restrictions may not be enough.
I'm worried that we will have introduction of infection into the community here sooner or later, maybe not because of the people coming in and staying in quarantine, but through some other way. Like in Guangzhou, we just recently saw the outbreak at the shipping terminal, and there are other loopholes as well. There's the people who are exempt from quarantine who can come in and bring in an infection. We just reported some research results last week that the 3rd wave and 4th wave were all those infections, thousands of infections, were all caused by just a handful of introductions.
University of Hong Kong epidemiologist Benjamin Cowling. The Australian state of Queensland has reintroduced coronavirus restrictions in a number of regions after 2 new community-transmitted cases were detected. People in areas of southeast Queensland, including Brisbane, must now wear masks when they're outside their homes. Perth in Western Australia has also started a lockdown. Restrictions are in force in New South Wales as well. Kerry Chant is that state's Chief Health Officer.
What I want to see in progressive days is that we start seeing all of the cases being effectively isolated that we're announcing, and that's going to be a key indicator of success.
Hong Kong's air could be as fresh as that of Tokyo or Paris by 2035. That was the pronouncement by the government as it finally updated its clean air plan for the SAR. The previous one expired last year. Jimmy Choi reports.
Environment Secretary Wong Kam Sing says Hong Kong's air quality improved over the past decade, but challenges remain for the city to reduce ozone levels, roadside nitrogen oxides and vessel emissions. He says the SAR's air quality is currently on a par with that of Taiwan and Singapore, but the territory will strive to catch up with exemplary cities, including the Japanese and French capitals, by 2035. The ultimate goal, he says, is to meet the highest air quality standards set by the World Health Organization. The new Clean Air Plan doesn't set out specific targets for pollution levels or an exact time frame for Hong Kong to meet the best WHO air quality standards. But Mr. Wong says the government will adopt a range of measures to further reduce air pollution, from promoting the use of electric private cars and franchise buses and using cleaner energy, to phasing out all diesel commercial vehicles and collaborating with Guangdong authorities in reducing emissions of air pollutants. Asked how the government will further boost the use of cleaner energy and reduce carbon emissions from power plants, he said the administration will announce more details in its next climate action plan.
The forthcoming climate action plan would tell you more about our plan to decarbonize Hong Kong. And the power generation is one of the key components to be discussed. We would try to, firstly, maximize the use of local renewable energy that is supported by many people in town.
Owen Fong, Deputy Director of Environmental Protection, admits the city's ozone levels continue to rise over the past decade, but says the government will try harder to tackle the problem.
We will apply more the so-called microsensors in our air monitoring stations and also in some places in different districts in order to generate more data and give us more room and information to do more in-depth analysis. And then it will also help us to diagnose, how ozone is being formed in Hong Kong. And I think, with all these kind of efforts, we should be better equipped and then have better information to deal with the problem.
According to government data collected from the city's roadside monitoring stations, the average concentration of major air pollutants, including nitrogen dioxide, fine suspended particulates, respirable suspended particulates, and sulfur dioxide, all fell between 40% and 50% from 2010 to 2020. But a report by Clean Air Network found that Hong Kong's ozone levels increased by 129% from 2013 to 2020, while the levels of air pollutants, including nitrogen dioxide and the suspended particulates, exceeded the WHO's air quality targets by 60 to 90%.
Professor Alexis Lau from the University of Science and Technology's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering welcomed the update of Hong Kong's clean air plan, but he told Violet Wong it's going to be a major challenge to tackle the high levels of ozone that often blanket the city.
There's quite a number of initiatives in the government's plan, partly related to just air quality related thing, partly related to the energy saving, which by reducing carbon, there's also a lot of reduction in nitrogen oxide, which is a key pollutant, contributing to a lot of our local problem. So with those two going together, I think that we certainly have good chance of achieving world first-tier city standard in terms of air quality.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for Hong Kong when it comes to tackling air pollution here?
I think it's still, overall, the most difficult topic is still ozone. Because ozone is not just local government, it is a regional issue. So that part, we have to coordinate with Guangdong. And Guangdong is doing quite a bit. But this is a much, much more complicated issue with many different sources that we have to tackle. If we look at the U.S. experience, they take something like 70 years to really get the air pollution down to the level they have right now. So I would expect that if we can tackle this in 5, 10 years, it would be a major achievement.
Professor Alexis Lau speaking there to Violet Wong. An accounting manager of a sushi restaurant chain has been jailed for 6 years and 8 months after he admitted to stealing $24 million from the company between 2005 and 2007. Wendy Wong has more.
The High Court heard that 50-year-old Eric Tong pocketed the revenues he collected from 6 Itamae sushi restaurants on 680 occasions and fabricated deposit slips to make the company management believe he had put the money in the restaurant's bank account. Tong spent and gambled the money away. In 2007, he failed to submit the relevant accounting documents to the company's auditor. He fled to the mainland after the matter was exposed. He returned to Hong Kong in 2016 and was arrested in 2019. Tong pleaded guilty to 6 counts of threat in January. In passing sentence, Deputy High Court Judge Andrew Bruce criticized Tong for abusing the authority given by his company to commit the offences repeatedly for a long period of time. The judge said the crime was shameful as it involved a breach of trust and a huge sum.
Wendy Wong there with that report. It's emerged that residents at the Florida apartment block that collapsed last week were warned in April that the building was in urgent need of repair. 11 people are known to have died when the building collapsed, but another 150 remain unaccounted for. The BBC's Sophie Long reports from Miami.
As more than 200 rescue workers continue their round-the-clock operation, painstakingly removing rubble in the hope of finding voids that could contain survivors, it emerged that the president of the Buildings Association explained in a letter on the 9th of April that damage detected 3 years ago had become significantly worse. Families of the victims, frustrated by the agonisingly slow process, are demanding to know how such a catastrophic collapse could have happened. They're being reassured that the rescue operation will continue.
The BBC's Sophie Long reporting there. And it's time now in Hong Kong today for a look at the business headlines this morning. Here's Carolyn Wright.
Surging tech stocks pushed the Nasdaq to a new closing high, boosted by an upbeat consumer confidence report. The Nasdaq added 0.5% to 14,528, its 5th record finish in 6 sessions. The Dow rose fractionally to 34,292. The S&P 500 also gained fractionally to 4,291. A rare luxury residential site in Kowloon Tong will be put on the market in the next 3 months under government tender. The site on Broadcast Drive, which was formerly occupied by RTHK's Education Television, is expected to fetch about $1 billion. It's one of 2 residential sites that will be on offer in the July to September quarter. Together with a site in Yuen Long, they will provide just 200 homes. The Development Secretary, Michael Wong, said projects by the MTR, Urban Renewal Authority and other private developers will make up the bulk of the quarterly target of 5,400 flats, the highest in recent years. Mr Wong said that means the government is on course to meet its full-year housing target.
Together with the supply of 1,650 flats in the first quarter, the total private housing supply in the first half of this financial year will amount to about 7,050 flats, representing over 50% of our private housing supply annual target.
For the first time, people who are 60 years old or above will be eligible to apply for the upcoming batch of the government's Silver Bond. The Financial Secretary, Paul Chan, announced in his budget in February that the age limit would be lowered from 65 to 60. The government now says the subscription period of the 3-year bond will begin from July the 20th with a guaranteed minimum interest rate of 3.5%. The issuance size will also be sharply increased from last year's $10 billion to $24 billion, with an option to further raise to $30 billion if market response is good. There will be no secondary market for the investment product. More than 500,000 people have tried to get their hands on shares of Niuki, with the mainland bubble tea chain receiving more than 640,000 applications during its Hong Kong IPO, which was oversubscribed more than 400 times. Only 8% of investors who applied for one lot of 500 shares will be fully allocated, while orders of at least 40 lots will be able to secure one lot. The mainland tea chain, which has one outlet in Hong Kong, has priced its shares at $19.80, the upper end of a proposed price range, raising more than $4.8 billion. Trading in its shares begins today. And in currencies at the moment, the yuan is trading at 6.46 to the US dollar, got 10 Hong Kong dollars, 75 cents to the pound, 110.5 yen to the US dollar, and $1 US, 19 cents to the euro. Oil is up almost 2/3% at $73.40 a barrel, while gold is down 0.1% at $1,762 an ounce.
Amid the pandemic, we still need to carry on our work and daily lives. All of us wish to stay healthy and avoid being infected. Vaccination is one of the most effective ways to protect yourself and your family. It also helps us resume normal life earlier. Protection starts 14 days after the second dose. Remember to maintain personal hygiene and wear a mask. Protect yourself and others. Let's get vaccinated.
Good morning, I'm Adam Jung with sports. We start with football's Euro 2020 and a clash between two great rivals, England and Germany at Wembley.
Sterling, sir! England lead! Havertz is able to play it through for Muller. Muller's one-on-one with Pickford, and he's put it wide! Oh my goodness, what an opportunity! Grealish's ball across, it's headed in by Kane! He's joined the party!
England are through to the quarterfinals after beating Germany 2-0 in front of their home fans. It was the first time they knocked out the Germans since 1966. Raheem Sterling opened scoring on the 75th minute before Harry Kane secured the win. Sterling has 3 goals in 4 games.
We knew we needed to put a big performance against a very good side, and I thought we'd done that today.
Of all the important goals you've scored for England, scoring the opener against Germany must be up there as one of the most special as well.
Yeah, for sure. I said, doing it for your country is always would always be special, and it's definitely a special moment for me.
Talk me through the emotion when it hit the back of the net, because the boys ran over in celebration, and you could just see what it meant to the whole team. Yeah,
I celebrated, and then for half a second I thought, let's let it not be offside. But yeah, I was just really happy it went in, and really happy we got the win.
England have yet to concede a goal in the tournament. Defender Harry Maguire was named man of the match.
We kept hearing things about they're not as good as they used to be, but they're a top team. They'll bounce back, and I'm sure they will, but they have great players, great structure. We've obviously changed our formation to match them up and try to be really aggressive out of the ball and go man for man as much as we can, and I felt like that worked. We didn't give them any rhythm or settle in the game, and yeah, I felt like for a large majority of the game we was in control of the game, and we know that we've got match winners in our team, and it's proven again.
The result means Joachim Löw has managed his last game for Germany. He had already confirmed his departure. Hansi Flick will take over. Ukraine are through to the quarterfinals of a major tournament for the first time after beating Sweden 2-1. Artem Dovbyk came off the bench to score the winning goal for his country in added time at the end of extra time. The quarterfinals kick off Friday night with Spain versus Switzerland, followed by Belgium versus Italy. On Saturday night, it's Czech Republic versus Denmark. England face Ukraine in Rome in the early morning hours of Sunday, Hong Kong time. Next to tennis, Serena Williams' dream of a record equaling 24th Grand Slam singles title has ended in tears. The 39-year-old was leading 3-1 in the first set of her first-round match at Wimbledon against Alexandra Sesnovich of Belarus when she slipped. She received medical attention but had to pull out at 3-all. She walked off center court in tears and said she was heartbroken to have retired injured. On the men's side, Roger Federer is through to the second round, but only after an injury to Adrian Mannarino, who retired at the start of the fifth set. Ice hockey now, and the Tampa Bay Lightning have overpowered the Montreal Canadiens to launch their back-to-back Stanley Cup bid with an emphatic 5-1 victory in Game 1 of the best-of-7 Cup Finals. Nikita Kucherov led Tampa with 2 goals on a 3-point night. Braden Point added 3 assists. And in the NBA, the Los Angeles Clippers stay alive after beating the Suns 116-102 in Phoenix in Game 5 of the Western Conference Final. Paul George led the Clippers with 41 points. Reggie Jackson added 23. The series moves back to LA with the Suns holding a 3-2 advantage. Game 6 is tomorrow morning, Hong Kong time. And for now, that's all the sports.
Thanks, Atom. Now the weather forecast. Sunny intervals with a few showers. Highs expected today of around 32 degrees. Winds moderate southwesterlies, occasionally fresh offshore. Forecasters say there will be a few showers and sunny intervals in the next couple of days. Right now it's 29 degrees, relative humidity 82%.
RTHK News.
It's 7 o'clock. I'm Samantha Butler. 3 groups have lost their appeal to stage a march tomorrow on the day when annual protest rallies have been held since Hong Kong's handover in 1997. The League of Social Democrats, Tin Shui Wai Connection and Save Lantau Alliance wanted to march from Victoria Park to government headquarters in Admiralty. The appeals board said the ban was reasonable given Hong Kong's low vaccination rate and the rise of a variant causing outbreaks in the region. Chan Po Ying from the League of Social Democrats says the group will still set up street booths, but police warned the public against gathering at Victoria Park, saying it wouldn't be tolerated. Here's Chief Superintendent Steve Cheung.
Police welcomes the decisions by the appeal board and appeals to members of the public not to participate in any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering, not to advertise or publicize any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering in any other manner.
The July the 1st rally was also banned last year because of the pandemic, but thousands of people took to the streets to protest the new national security law and hundreds were arrested. Health officials now say a 27-year-old airport worker most likely caught the more contagious Delta COVID variant after coming into brief contact with 3 arrivals from Indonesia. His case was reclassified as being linked to an imported case, meaning Hong Kong has gone 23 days with no locally transmitted coronavirus cases. Yesterday there was 1 imported case from England. Police have arrested 2 men in Lam Tin and Tai Po and seized chemicals that they said could be used to make homemade explosives. Alec McWhirter, a senior bomb disposal officer with the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Bureau, described the actions of the suspects as incredibly reckless.
The chemicals that were seized are consistent with the manufacture of gunpowder, a low explosive. The quantity of chemicals seized is consistent with an end product of approximately 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder. 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder could result in a very serious explosion. That this was being considered in a residential building is incredibly reckless.
Germany has withdrawn its last troops from Afghanistan. 570 troops flew home, ending Germany's nearly 20-year deployment in the country. The defence minister said the mission had tested the German military in what was its first foreign deployment since the Second World War. It cost the lives of 59 troops. Scientists have discovered an ancient strain of plague bacteria in human remains dating back about 5,000 years. German researchers analysed the DNA recovered from the teeth and skull bones of a hunter-gatherer buried at a site in Latvia. They found the strain of the bacteria was probably less contagious and not as deadly as the version which became known as the Black Death. You're listening to the news on RTHK.
Good morning again. This is RTHK's Hong Kong Today with Janice Wong and me, Mike Weeks. Coming up.
There's quite a number of initiatives in the government's plan, partly related to just air quality related thing, partly related to the energy saving, which by reducing carbon, there's also a lot of reduction in nitrogen oxide, which is a key pollutant, contributing to a lot of our local problems.
Professor Alexis Lau from HKUST's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering welcomes the update of Hong Kong's Clean Air Plan, but he agrees with the Deputy Director of Environmental Protection that ozone pollution is going to remain a problem here for some time to come. We'll have more on that ahead, plus thousands of police will be out on the streets of Hong Kong to ensure the 24th anniversary of the handover is not marked by protests, and England finally beat Germany at a major football championship to set up a last-eight showdown with Ukraine at Euro 2020.
But first, the infection of an airport worker with the Delta strain of COVID-19 has been linked to 3 cases imported from Indonesia, and health officials say it's no longer regarded as untraceable. The 27-year-old man was Hong Kong's first case of the highly infectious variant. His colleague at another job in a Tai Po mall also came down with the mutant strain. Officials say he came into contact with the 3 people from Indonesia at an airport specimen collection centre earlier this month. They reported just 1 imported COVID case yesterday, a 43-year-old arrival from Britain. Flights from the UK are banned from tomorrow. Timmy Sung reports.
The flight suspension will take effect from July the 1st, and Dr. Zhang from the Medical Association says it will come just in time to stop Hong Kong residents returning to the city over the summer holidays.
We need to be vigilant about whether there is any imported Delta variants to affect our community. These interim measures has to be revised or reviewed at intervals so as to make sure that the banning of the UK flights won't affect our Hong Kong citizens very much.
But he says in the longer run, the authorities have to think about whether flight bans will still be appropriate as the Delta variant is going to spread across the globe.
Should we all ban countries with Delta variants being affected, or we just need to change the policy of requiring all the passengers coming from elsewhere needs to receive 2 doses of vaccines together with a confirmed antibody testings so as to verify the passengers somehow get the immunity.
Epidemiologist Benjamin Cowling from the University of Hong Kong, meanwhile, says the government needs to distinguish between passengers who are infected with COVID and those who have recovered from an infection.
Most likely, given the low level of incidence in the UK, it doesn't pose a major risk to Hong Kong to have people coming in from the UK and serving 21 days in quarantine, remember. So I think the quarantine has been working. Actually, 21 days may even be too long, but it's been working.
Professor Cowling said he's worried that sooner or later there may be cases in the community that are not caused by people who have left quarantine, but through other sources, such as people who were exempted from quarantine.
Timmy Song there. Police have arrested 2 people after seizing chemicals that could have been used to make gunpowder. Officers allege the suspects had called for some well-known people to be killed, but stopped short of linking the case directly to tomorrow's anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR. Wendy Wong has that story.
Police arrested a pair in Lam Tin and Tai Po and accused them of making social media posts aimed at inciting hatred and violence. Asked by reporters whether they were linking the alleged find to the handover anniversary, the police said they would not rule out the possibility that some people planned to hurt innocent civilians on a special occasion. Alec McWhirter, a senior bomb disposal officer, said the amount of precursor chemicals found in a residential unit in Lam Tin was very dangerous.
The chemicals that were seized are consistent with the manufacture of gunpowder, a low explosive. The quantity of chemicals seized is consistent with an end product of approximately 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder. 1 to 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder could result in a very serious explosion. That this was being considered in a residential building is incredibly reckless.
The police said they also seized some gun parts and imitation guns. They said the case showed that a small number of people in Hong Kong still want to take radical and violent action to disrupt stability in society.
Wendy Wong reporting. The police have made it clear that they will adopt a zero-tolerance approach to any demonstrations tomorrow on the 24th anniversary of Hong Kong's handover. That was the word from Chief Superintendent Steve Cheung as he welcomed an appeal board's decision to uphold the police ban on the July 1st march.
Police welcomes the decisions by the appeal board and appeals to members of the public not to participate in any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering, not to advertise or publicize any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering in any other manner.
The League of Social Democrats, Tin Shui Wai Connection and Save Lantau Alliance had sought permission to march from Victoria Park to the government headquarters in Admiralty. The police have warned people not to gather at Victoria Park and are reportedly said to deploy 10,000 officers across Hong Kong tomorrow.
President Xi Jinping has urged Chinese Communist Party members to forever trust, love and contribute to the party. Mr. Xi, who's also General Secretary of the party, was speaking as he presented medals of the highest honour to 29 party members. He also said all party members need to maintain their integrity, conduct themselves in a clean and honest manner, and be forever loyal to the Communist Party.
All party members must be aware of, observe, and practice the ethics. We must aim to be clean people and do clean deeds. We must devote ourselves wholeheartedly to public duties and maintain the political nature of the party to be clean.
Environment Secretary Wong Kam Sing has pledged to try to meet the highest air quality standards as he set out the government's new Clean Air Plan. His department hopes to do this by promoting electric vehicles and looking into renewable energy. Hong Kong has recorded less pollution with better visibility in the past decade. The Deputy Director of Environmental Protection, Owen Fung, said the city still needs to tackle the issue of ozone levels.
We will apply more the so-called microsensors in our air monitoring stations and also in some places in different districts in order to generate more data and give us more room and information to do more in-depth analysis. And then it will also help us to diagnose, how ozone is being formed in Hong Kong. And I think, with all these kind of efforts, we should be better equipped and then have better information to deal with the problem.
The Environment Secretary there, Wong Kam, saying, well, under the new Clean Air Plan, the government said Hong Kong's air could be as fresh as that of Tokyo or Paris by 2035. Well, to give us his views on that, we're now joined by Patrick Fong, the Chief Executive of the Green Group, the Clean Air Network. Mr. Fong, good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Do you think setting a target of getting our air as clean as Tokyo or Paris is a good target?
For the past decade, I think the public has a very strong expectation on the air quality. And then at Clean Air Network, we always demand for Hong Kong's air to level with the WHO absolute target. And as the government is unable to provide the timeline to achieve that, I think it is still good that government has pledged at least to get Hong Kong comparable to other global cities like Tokyo and Paris. Of course, we would like to ask for more. We would like to have air quality level with more aggressive cities like London and New York, which is now still 70%, and 48% below Hong Kong's pollution. So I think at that front, the government is setting a lower end of the global cities as the target right now.
It says its ultimate goal are to meet those WHO targets that you mentioned, but there's still no timetable, you're saying?
Yes, there's no timetable. The government says going to get long term. And our question is, what takes us so long? We have asked these questions in 2013. What are the challenges? Why Hong Kong cannot set a target right now? Whether it is 2035 or 2040, I think the government should answer for these questions.
But our air has improved quite a bit, hasn't it, over the past decade, or at least since the 2013 plan?
Yeah, indeed. The air quality has improved by at least 30% at the ambient and roadside level. That proves that by Hong Kong SAR policy alone, we can achieve some of these achievements. However, that limits among the emission control measures. What we also need is the transport demand management solutions as well as urban planning solutions. So that's why it's good to see other bureaus get on board. But at the same time, we don't see a very strong sense of the other bureaus to be the co-owner of these clean air plans. And actually, I think the Health Bureau, the Transport Bureau, and the Development Bureau should be co-owner of these clean air plans.
You mean, essentially, you want a whole rethink in the government's policies for there to be much less emphasis on cars. That's been your strategy for quite a long time.
Yes, indeed. What we can see a bit is the goal set by the Environment Bureau, but that is limited within the emission control measures. What we do not see is that how about control of the growth of the vehicular traffic? What about control of the traffic congestion? What about limit the street canyon effect? The other bureau has mentioned some of the work they would do, but we do not know what are the objectives, the measurable goals, and the milestone. At least in 5 years' time, we do not see that.
Monitoring of roadside air pollution hasn't really increased at all either, has it, in the past decade or so?
Roadside monitoring shows that the air quality has improved, but what we do see is that there's a really strong gap, a very big gap between the actual and the WHO most stringent level at the roadside.
So what, that means that our population's health is being put at risk by walking on some of our busy roads?
Indeed, at this moment, it is not still very safe to walk at the busy urban roadside areas. But what we want to see in this 15 years plan is that at least there are milestones set, say at 5 years, 10 years target, how we are moving Hong Kong to a more walkable environment so that we could reduce the unnecessary reliance on vehicular traffic. And that is what other global cities are doing. Tokyo are doing that. Paris are doing that. London and New York are doing that. But why Hong Kong is not making a strong commitment on that? We can't see why.
This new plan, though, also sets out a vision for cutting our greenhouse gas emissions. That's got to be positive, at least.
The greenhouse gas, I think the government will provide more details in the climate action plan to be reviewed later this year. But what we want to see is more commitment on the renewable energy, because energy accounts for over 80% of the greenhouse gas carbon emission. And without a rethink of the energy policy, it is impossible for Hong Kong to achieve our carbon neutrality goal at 2050.
And also, obviously, energy here accounts for a lot of our air pollution, doesn't it?
But compared to road vehicular traffic and the marine emission, the power plant is not that significant in contributing the air pollution. So we do see why in this clean air plan there's less emphasis on the energy side.
Okay, you mentioned marine traffic. That's a major source still, but are things improving there as well?
That is improving. However, there are other measures that we can do. For example, right now we have set the sulfur standard at a cap of 0.5%. In the International Maritime Organization, there's a stronger standard right now to tighten it to 0.1% of the sulfur max content in the ocean-going vessel fuel. So we want that to happen, and we didn't see it in this cleaner plan. So the government should think in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, Hong Kong should move either to the domestic emission control area aligned with other mainland cities, or we should have the IMO emission control areas.
Okay, just one other issue. I mean, both the Environment Secretary Wong Kam Seng and the EPD admit that ozone pollution is probably going to be the toughest challenge here.
Yeah, indeed. What we do see is a 3 years joint study among Hong Kong and mainland cities in GBA. But we want to see is what we demand is a joint action within 3 years' time. We want to see a joint action plan committed by the Hong Kong and mainland cities in GBA, or else what we will expect is that we have a bunch of data after 3 years, but the action plan would come much later. And then when it comes to the ozone level that is at a safe level to human beings, we might need to wait, say 5 years or 10 years' time, which is not good in terms of public health perspective.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. But thanks, as always, for joining us. That was Patrick Fong, the Chief Executive of the Clean Air Network.
It's now 19 minutes past 7 on Hong Kong Today. Former RTHK radio presenter Alan Au has accused the government station of exhausting all its powers to remove voices it doesn't like. He was removed from a program he hosted for 11 years at 1 hour's notice on Monday. Timmy Sung reports.
The veteran journalist said he had expected this day to come, adding he was only told about the personnel changes about an hour before the show began. Mr. Au made the remarks on commercial radio a day after he was ditched from RTHK's evening current affairs show, Open Line, Open View, which he had hosted for 11 years. He said he believed the real reason for his dismissal was related to articles he had written that were critical of the government, although he stressed that he had never shared his views during the radio show, and his questions to the interviewees were also based on facts. He also said there have been more voices from the pro-establishment camp than before. What we have seen over the past few months is that RTHK has been using all its administrative power to do whatever it wants, to remove people and voices it doesn't like, Mr. Au said, adding that he expected to see further personnel changes at the station. He accused RTHK's management of acting against the spirit of public service broadcasting. The RTHK Programme Staff Union said it was extremely worried that impartial and critical voices are disappearing from the airwaves. It also questioned why management had to inform Mr. Au about his dismissal at the 11th hour. His departure came a little over a week after another RTHK radio presenter, Tsang Chi-ho, said he had been sacked with immediate effect. The government's broadcaster has said personnel arrangements are internal editorial matters and declined to comment further.
Timmy Sung reporting. Meanwhile, RTHK has scrapped 2 of its Chinese-language television programs, RTHK Talk Show and This Week, saying it's updating its offerings.
The former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, has been sentenced to 15 months in jail for contempt of court after refusing to appear at an anti-corruption inquiry. So how has this sentence gone down in South Africa? The BBC's Richard Hamilton reports.
Jacob Zuma has always been a divisive figure in South Africa, and he's been compared in some ways to Donald Trump. And in the same way, his supporters will back him no matter what. They'll back him to the hilt, and they refuse to believe that he's done anything wrong, and they think that he's a victim of a kind of political witch hunt or smear campaign. So some of his more prominent supporters include the Veterans Association of the former armed wing of the ANC. They put out a statement published in the Mail and Guardian newspaper in South Africa saying this is utterly unacceptable. We express our outrage and oppose this sentence. And then a friend of Jacob Zuma, Bishop Vusi Dube, who's a politician from KwaZulu-Natal, which is Jacob Zuma's sort of home state, says, "I'm in tears. I've never seen a mismanagement of justice like this. It's not easy for anybody to accept that a man who has done so much for our country will be sent to prison just because he won't sit in on a commission that's presided over by somebody he thought was biased." And he says people are calling to say they're on their way to Nkandla, which is Jacob Zuma's homestead, to protect the former president.
The BBC's Richard Hamilton reporting there. And now with another look at the business headlines, here's Carolyn Wright.
Shares in the ride-hailing giant Didi will start trading on the New York Stock Exchange today. It's expected to be priced at the top of its range. The BBC's Michelle Fleury is in New York.
Despite political tensions between the US and China, Chinese companies are still flocking to Wall Street. And the biggest of these American stock market debuts is that of Chinese ride-hailing giant Didi, whose shares begin trading on the New York Stock Exchange this Wednesday. Now, Didi is often called the Uber of China. It provides a smartphone app that lets users connect with taxis for hire. And the 9-year-old company operates in nearly 4,000 cities across 15 countries. In its prospectus, it said it had more than 493 million active users at the end of March. And it is just one of many Chinese companies hoping to tap into the US financial markets this year. That's despite legislation passed last year threatening to delist any Chinese company that didn't comply with 3 years of US audits. So why all the interest? Well, if you look at what has been happening on US financial markets, money has been pouring in, even with the uncertainty surrounding the pandemic. And just look at the recent highs on the S&P 500 as an example of that. You also have the Federal Reserve, which has hinted that rates may go up in 2023. Now, since rates and markets tend to move in opposite directions, an increase could cause the stock market to fall, which is why these companies are trying to strike now while conditions are ripe.
And Asian shares look set for a steady start as trading begins for the day. Hang Seng Index futures are up 0.1%. In currencies, the yuan is trading at 6.46 to the US dollar, got 10 Hong Kong dollars 74 cents to the pound, 110.5 yen to the US dollar, and 1 US dollar 19 cents to the euro.
The Consumption Voucher Scheme accepts registrations from July 4th. Eligible Hong Kong permanent residents and new arrivals age 18 or above can register at consumptionvoucher.gov.hk or submit a paper form to designated banks or post offices. Choose among Alipay HK, Octopus, Tap & Go, or WeChat Pay HK to receive your $5,000 consumption voucher by installments. Register online by July 17th to receive the first installment on August 1st. Spending together, boosting the economy.
Adam Jung with sports. The quarterfinal lineup at football's Euro 2020 is complete after wins for England and Ukraine. We start at Wembley Stadium, where England defeated their old rivals Germany 2-0 with second-half goals from Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane. The BBC's John Murray was at the game.
Gareth Southgate's team created more memories for a new generation with England's first win against a German team in a knockout match since 1966. In a closely fought match, goalkeeper Jordan Pickford's saves were vitally important as England built momentum and scored their goals in the last 15 minutes. Substitute Jack Grealish involved in both, as first Raheem Sterling, then Harry Kane converted from close range to a cacophonous reaction from a crowd of almost 42,000. Crucially, in between the goals was a glaring miss by Germany's Thomas Muller, but England will now leave Wembley for Rome, having still yet to concede a goal in the tournament.
Let's hear from the England defender Harry Maguire, who was named man of the match.
We kept hearing things about they're not as good as they used to be, but they're a top team. They'll bounce back, and I'm sure they will, but they have great players, great structure. We've obviously changed our formation to match them up and try to be really aggressive out of the ball and go man for man as much as we can, and I felt like that worked. We didn't give them any rhythm or settle in the game, and yeah, I felt like the large majority of the game we was in control of the game, and we know that we've got match winners in our team, and it's proven again.
The result means Joachim Löw has managed his last game for Germany. He had already confirmed his departure prior to the tournament. His place will be taken by Hansi Flick. Ukraine are through to the quarterfinals of a major tournament for the first time after beating Sweden 2-1. Artem Dovbyk came off the bench to score the winning goal for his country in added time at the end of extra time. The quarterfinal matches kick off late Friday night Hong Kong time, starting with Spain versus Switzerland, followed by Belgium versus Italy. Denmark play Czech Republic late Saturday night, and it'll be the early hours of Sunday here when England play Ukraine in Rome. Next to tennis, Serena Williams is out of Wimbledon after twisting her ankle in a first-round match against Alexandra Sesnovic of Belarus. On the men's side, Roger Federer is through to the second round, but only after an injury to Adrian Mannarino. The BBC's Chris Dennis has more.
Serena walked onto centre court wearing another eye-catching outfit to start her quest for that elusive 24th Grand Slam title. She left the court barely 45 minutes later in tears, her hopes in tatters after slipping awkwardly during the first set. Huge disappointment for Williams, her team and the centre court crowd. Federer's match a little earlier was also decided by an injury. The Swiss hadn't lost in the opening round of a Grand Slam for 18 years. But at 2-1 down to the Frenchman Adrien Mannarino and struggling to find his touch, people were thinking the unthinkable. But then midway through the fourth set, Mannarino slipped and twisted his knee before retiring at the start of the fifth. Heartache for the Frenchman, relief for Federer. And so contrasting fortunes for two of the sport's greatest ever players as they approach their 40th birthdays. Williams out, Federer through, but you have to wonder how many more times we'll see either of them on the hallowed turf of Wimbledon.
We finish with ice hockey's Stanley Cup Finals, where the Tampa Bay Lightning overpowered the Montreal Canadiens to launch their bid for back-to-back NHL titles. Nikita Kucherov scored twice in an emphatic 5-1 home win for Tampa in Game 1 of the best-of-7 series. Braden Point added 3 assists. Captain Steven Stamkos was also on target. Montreal entered the series as heavy underdogs once again. They're bidding to become the first team from Canada to lift the Stanley Cup in 28 years. And that's your look at sports.
Thanks, Atom. The weather forecast for today, sunny intervals with a few showers. The top temperature will be around 32 degrees. Winds moderate southwesterlies, occasionally fresh offshore. Forecasters say there will be a few showers and sunny intervals in the next couple of days. And it will be very hot over the weekend. At the moment, it's 29 degrees, relative humidity 81%. It's now 7:30 with the news summary. Here's Samantha Butler.
It's emerged that residents at the Florida apartment block that collapsed last week were warned in April that the building was in urgent need of repair. The building's Residents Association had asked those living there to contribute to the cost of extensive repair work. Here's the BBC's Sophie Long.
What's been reported in the US media today is that a letter was sent to residents of Champlain South Tower in April, so a few months ago, saying that following a report that was carried out in 2018, so 3 years ago, which found major structural damage to the concrete, in that letter they were told the concrete deterioration is accelerating, the roof situation is much worse, new problems have been identified. We heard from the mayor of Miami-Dade County today, who was saying that investigation is of course underway and all factors will be examined.
11 people are known to have died when the building collapsed, but another 150 remain unaccounted for. Police in Western Canada say more than 30 people in the Vancouver area have died in an unprecedented heat wave. Most were elderly. On Sunday, Canada recorded its highest ever temperature, with Lytton in British Columbia soaring to 46.6 degrees Celsius. In the United States, the Pacific Northwest is also facing dangerous heat levels. Experts are warning extreme weather patterns could become more common. South Africa's top court has sentenced the former President Jacob Zuma to 15 months in jail for contempt of court. This follows his refusal to appear at an anti-corruption inquiry in February, accusing it of political bias. Sisi Kampepe presided over the trial.
I am left with no option but to commit Mr. Zuma to imprisonment with the hope that doing so sends an unequivocal message. In this, our constitutional dispensation, the rule of law and the administration of justice prevails.
Jacob Zuma was ousted as president in 2018 over allegations of mismanagement and systematic corruption. He denied involvement in a number of graft scandals. Japanese researchers say wild boar are thriving in the area around Fukushima nuclear plant, which was evacuated after a nuclear disaster a decade ago. Here's the BBC's Victoria Gill.
In this now post-human zone, researchers used genetic techniques to track how wild animals were being affected. DNA from Fukushima's wild boars revealed that they'd bred with domestic pigs that escaped from abandoned farms. This has led to some unusual wild domestic hybrids with the rangy appearance of boar but the pink and spotted colouring of pigs. The scientists say they didn't detect any genetic effect of the radiation on the wild boar, but breeding with the pigs has altered their biology in ways that could have consequences for the animal's health.
2 gorillas born in captivity in zoos in Europe are thought to have made conservation history by having a baby together in the wild. The pair of western lowland gorillas, a 15-year-old English-born male and a 13-year-old female from France, have been living in a national park in Gabon for several years. You're listening to the news on RTHK.
Thanks to Samantha Butler in our newsroom. This is Hong Kong Today with me, Janice Wong, and Mike Weeks.
Police welcomes the decisions by the appeal board and appeals to members of the public not to participate in any unauthorized assembly or prohibited group gathering. Police adopts a zero-tolerance approach to any illegal acts and takes resolute enforcement actions.
Chief Superintendent Steve Chung welcomes an appeals board decision to uphold the police ban on tomorrow's July the 1st march. It was banned for the first time last year, a day after the national security law came into force. But thousands of people still took to the streets of the island. But the force is adopting a zero-tolerance approach to any demonstrations tomorrow, deploying some 10,000 officers to ensure the anniversary of the handover is not marked by any kind of protest.
Well, it seems like it's going to be a somewhat muted 24th anniversary of the handover tomorrow, with many top officials, including Chief Executive Carrie Lam, in Beijing for the start of lavish celebrations to mark next month's centenary of the founding of the Communist Party. President Xi Jinping yesterday urged its members to forever trust, love and contribute to the party. Mr. Xi, who's also the party's General Secretary, was speaking as he presented medals of the highest honour to 29 party members. Here's Priscilla Ng.
The July 1st medal, announced in 2017 and given out for the first time, is part of President Xi's efforts to shore up the image of the party. Recipients included soldiers, community workers, and professionals in the arts and science. The awards ceremony took place at Beijing's Great Hall of the People with much fanfare and was broadcast live on national television. During the event, the Chinese leader said all party members need to maintain their integrity, conduct themselves in a clean and honest manner, and be forever loyal to the party. He spoke through an interpreter.
All party members must be aware of, observe, and practice the ethics. We must aim to be clean people and do clean deeds. We must devote ourselves wholeheartedly to public duties and maintain the political nature of the party to be clean.
全党同志都要把对马克思主义的信仰 对中国特色社会主义的信念
All comrades must have complete faith in Marxism and socialism with Chinese characteristics and make that their lifelong aspiration. They must forever trust and love the party, keep the people close to their hearts, and dedicate everything to the party and the people, President Xi added. On Thursday, a major ceremony will be held to mark the 100th year since the CCP's founding, when the Chinese leader is expected to make a longer speech to outline his vision for the party's future.
Priscilla Ng reporting. A recent survey has found a sharp 7% rise in Hong Kong people who feel proud to be Chinese citizens, the highest score in a decade at 41%. But 55% told the pollsters they don't feel proud to be Chinese. The Public Opinion Research Institute has also found that people's satisfaction towards Beijing's policies here has increased for a second consecutive year. The Institute's Deputy CEO, Chung Kim-wah, said the result was a little bit unexpected. But he said it doesn't mean people are satisfied with the central government, as the score is still lower than what it was in 2018.
In the last 10 years, this trend has consistently going down if you look into the long-term trend. After several years of going down, it goes back a little bit. I think it's normal. People, after 2 years of confrontation between the government and the people, and after 1 whole year under the oppressive national security law, some people may have slowly accustomed to the recent scenario.
Chung Kim-wah. Well, it's now been a year since the national security law was imposed on Hong Kong. Since then, 114 people have been arrested on suspicion of breaking the 4 offences under the legislation, with 64 charged. The youngest is aged just 15. The authorities have credited the law with bringing peace back to the city from the chaos of the anti-government protests of 2019. Certainly there's been no big demonstrations, but then gatherings of more than 4 people have been banned for more than 12 months because of COVID-19.
Well, some of the most prominent pro-democracy figures are now in custody, either waiting for their national security trials or doing time for protest-related offences. Others have fled the city. And although officials claim the legislation targets only a small number of people who threaten national security, many aren't so sure. Our reporter Timmy Song spoke to a veteran dramatist and a teacher to see how they've been affected by the national security law.
The national security law came into effect on the 30th of June. It only targets a very small minority of people who breach the law.
Apple Daily founder Jimmy Lai is arrested under the national security law.
Most of the 55 opposition figures arrested over July's pan-Democrat primaries.
Movie fans and critics expressed dismay at the government's move to introduce censorship on national security grounds.
I think at least my freedom from fear is not protected.
Wu Haifai is a drama industry veteran, the artistic director of The Pens.
Well, whenever I want to put on a show, I have new ideas coming. I have to worry about whether it will infringe this new law.
His drama company is known for doing documentary theatre, producing works that reflect and respond to what's happening in Hong Kong. In 2014, it put on a show about the lyricist behind the national anthem Tian Han, who was heavily criticized during the Cultural Revolution and died in prison. Also that year, it staged a production about the 1967 riots in Hong Kong. Mr. Wu says the security law is forcing him to self-censor what he wants to do. He says the problem is that it's vaguely defined and can be enforced arbitrarily.
You have to spend more time into thinking about whether it will violate the law, whether it will put yourself in danger, instead of spending time on polishing your art, finding ways to better express your vision. And the second thing is that the choices are more limited. This kind of words, Hong Kong Gia You, Hong Kong Oil, is just, I don't see anything anti-government at all. But nowadays, at least when I speak these words right now, I hesitate. It is not good for the healthy artistic environment.
While topics such as Hong Kong independence are definitely off limit, the dramatist says he won't shy away from the 2019 social unrest, as the anti-government's protests were a critical moment in the territory's history.
We are afraid, I think no one can say that we are not afraid in this field. The bottom line is we don't want to do something against our conscience, at least in the arts field. If it is not promoting freedom, if it is not promoting democracy, if it is not promoting love, I think we won't do it.
Don't worry too much. In case they really have some worries, they try to sort it out. And there are many channels to resolve it.
Legislator Ma Fong Kwok represents the performing arts industry in LegCo. He says he shares his constituents' concerns on the security legislation because it is still relatively new.
in the creative world, you might have many different scenarios and also different situations. And also it's very difficult to comment whether a certain dialogue or a certain expression would go beyond the so-called red line of the national security law. The good thing is that if you are performing a show, normally you would have a script, you have other reference material, so they can try to clarify beforehand. And if it really, in a very sensitive situation, I do believe that it's not difficult to try to get around that by making some slight changes.
The local deputy to the National People's Congress says if dramatists or art artists are still in doubt, they can always reach out to the authorities for clarification. But it's not just the arts that are affected by what many see as a draconian law. Authorities are obliged under the legislation to promote national security education in schools. Liberal studies are often cited by the pro-Beijing camp as one of the main reasons for the 2019 protests, in which many students took part, were arrested and charged. It has been renamed Citizenship and Social Development, or CSD, for the next school year, with a heavy emphasis on national education. But time and lessons devoted to the subject will be cut.
To be honest, less academic freedom for sure, because we need to alert on what we're saying.
That's the view of a freshly graduated liberal studies teacher. He wants to be known only as Mr. Chen. He says the national security law means teachers have to be careful about the material they use, while discussion of local political movements may be deemed sensitive.
Probably we would take a look to the government document first. Sometimes will be the media background, which one is more convincing or aligning with the document say. But I can also say in this way, when we compare with the liberal studies, actually we also got these kind of requirement. But of course, the video that we use or the stance or who write it or who wrote it, of course, nowadays we would be more careful. But in the past, we might not alert this one.
Since it is relatively a new thing to do, teachers must have worries and also difficulties in, first of all, comprehending the relevant content of the subject.
But Mervyn Zheng from the Education Policy Concern Group plays down worries about teaching of national security, especially when it comes to topics like Hong Kong independence.
For such sensitive topics, we expect the education authorities and also curriculum specialists will be able to come up with an objective analysis and then present it to schools through the standardized teaching materials in an impartial and also fair way, which are within the effective grasp of teachers and eventually the students. I think such topics, if given specialist treatment, can still be imparted to the students in a way and also at the level commensurate with the standards and also with their knowledge.
Ms. Zheng says the Education Bureau needs to give more support and guidance to teachers, and that the vetting of textbooks and teaching materials should keep them out of trouble. But he says the authorities should also be lenient with teachers.
As long as those mistakes or errors are only made because the subject being new to school or because of the inadequate training or preparation of the teachers, then I think the teachers should be given opportunities.
Timmy Sung there with that report. A report from Human Rights Watch on academic freedom in Australia has concluded that students from Hong Kong, the mainland and Taiwan have felt pressured not to show support for pro-democracy causes, and that Australian universities have themselves been afraid to offer them protection. Sophie McNeil is with Human Rights Watch Australia.
This report is called They Don't Understand the Fear We Have, because it's really the voice of Chinese students studying in Australia who say that the university system here doesn't understand the pressures on them, the surveillance that they endure, harassment, intimidation, and how they have to self-censor and alter their behaviour as a result. We wish that it would just be difference of opinion, you know, that would be totally normal and what you'd expect in a university. But what is happening is that people are being harassed if they go to a rally that supported Hong Kong democracy, or if they posted on their social media account support for Hong Kong, or question what was happening in Xinjiang. If someone in class said that I'm from the country of Taiwan, you know, that they were harassed. If academics did the same thing too, and it wasn't just kind of threats online. People were doxxed. They had their personal information released without permission, and they received abusive messages. People received threats that they would be reported on, and this was the number one concern at the forefront of students' minds that we interviewed, that this fear that their loved ones back home in China would suffer repercussions from Chinese authorities because of activities that they had engaged in Australia. And it wasn't just a fear, you know, that caused a real chilling effect. I mean, that did exist, but we actually discovered real-life consequences. So we verified 3 cases of students whose family back home had been visited, been warned, questioned by police because of what they'd done in Australia. So some really disturbing findings in this work.
An advisor to the Tigray People's Liberation Front in Ethiopia has told the BBC all Ethiopian troops have been forced out of the region, which has seen months of fighting, but the claim hasn't been independently verified. Phone and internet communication across Tigray have been down since yesterday, a day after government troops withdrew from the regional capital and declared a unilateral ceasefire. The BBC's Vivian Nunes reports from Nairobi.
When Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent troops to take over the Tigrayan city of Mekelle last November to oust the region's ruling party, he said victory would be swift. But after 8 months of deadly fighting, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front has taken control of the city, and Ethiopian forces have fled. Mr Ahmed quickly declared a humanitarian ceasefire in Tigray, but it's clear he no longer has the upper hand in the conflict. Before the TPLF puts down arms, it says it wants to drive out of Tigray all so-called invading enemies, including militia from the region of Amhara and soldiers from the neighbouring Eritrea. Getachew Reda is the TPLF spokesman.
We'll do whatever it takes to see to it that our people remain safe and secure. So if going to Amhara is what it takes, we'll do it. If going to Eritrea is what it takes, we'll do it.
But today, Eritrean troops were reportedly pushed out of the town of Shire, prompting celebrations on the streets. For millions of people in Tigray desperate for food and other supplies, the real question is whether the ceasefire will mean better access for aid agencies. Last month, the UK's Special Envoy on Famine Prevention, Nick Dyer, called the situation in Tigray catastrophic and warned of the risk of famine.
It's emerged the apartment block that collapsed in Miami last week had faced years of scrutiny over its deteriorating condition. Experts are still trying to figure out exactly why it fell down, with the loss of at least 11 lives. Over 100 other people are still unaccounted for. The New York Times is reporting some concerning new information, as the BBC's Sophie Long reports from Los Angeles.
The president of the condominium association, so the president of the building association, actually wrote to residents in April, on April the 9th, and explained that the damage that had been detected to the building in a structural engineer's report of 2018, so 3 years ago, had got significantly worse and that urgent repairs were required. Now, what we understand is that repairs to the roof of the building had started, they were underway, but no repairs to the concrete, and that's what this report found in 2018, that there were significant breaks in the concrete. So this, of course, one strand of investigation that people are investigating now to find out exactly how this building collapsed so rapidly. Some of the families, as you can imagine, are deeply frustrated by the slow, painstaking search and rescue operation that's currently underway. It's now in day 6, and they're now desperate not only for news of their relatives, but of course for some answers as to how this could possibly have happened in one of the richest countries in the world.
Here in Hong Kong, health authorities have linked the infection of an airport worker with the Delta variant of COVID-19 to 3 cases imported from Indonesia and say it's no longer regarded as untraceable. The 27-year-old man was Hong Kong's first case of the highly infectious variant. His colleague at another job in a Tai Po mall also came down with the mutant strain.
The Centre for Health Protection says the man, the airport worker, came into contact with the 3 people from Indonesia at an airport specimen collection centre earlier this month. It reported just 1 imported COVID case yesterday, a 43-year-old arrival from Britain. Flights from the UK are to be banned from tomorrow. Epidemiologist Benjamin Cowling from the University of Hong Kong says the Delta variant could be prevalent around the world within months, and he told RTHK that airport restrictions may not be enough.
I'm worried that we will have introduction of infection into the community here sooner or later. Maybe not because of the people coming in and staying in quarantine, but through some other way. Like in Guangzhou, we just recently saw the outbreak at the shipping terminal. And there are other loopholes as well. There's the people who are exempt from quarantine who can come in and bring in an infection. We just reported some research results last week that the 3rd wave and 4th wave were all caused, all those infections, thousands of infections were all caused by just a handful of introductions.
RTHK's former ETV building in Broadcast Drive is being put up for redevelopment in the next 3 months under government tender and is expected to fetch about $1 billion. It's one of just 2 residential sites that will be on offer in the July to September quarter. Together, they will provide 200 homes. But Development Secretary Michael Wong said projects by the MTR, Urban Renewal Authority and other private developers will make up the bulk of the quarterly target of 5,400 flats, which he said is the highest in recent years. He said the government is on course to meet its full-year housing target.
Together with the supply of 1,650 flats in the first quarter, the total private housing supply in the first half of this financial year will amount to about 7,050 flats, representing over 50% of our private housing supply annual target.
Development Secretary Michael Wong there. And now with a final look at the business news this morning, here's Carolyn Wright.
Asian shares look set for a steady start as trading begins for the day. Hang Seng Index futures are up 0.1% and S&P futures up 0.1%. In currencies, yuan is trading at 6.46 to the US dollar, on 10 Hong Kong dollars 74 cents to the pound, 110.6 yen to the US dollar, and $1 US dollar 19 cents to the euro. Stay tuned for the latest financial analysis with Money Talk after the news at 8. Joining Peter Lewis today are Stuart Aldcroft, Chairman of Citi Trust, Patrick Bennett, macro strategist at CIBC World Markets, and RTHK's international economics correspondent, Barry Wood.
To defeat the COVID-19 epidemic and resume normal life, everyone should get vaccinated. No matter how young or fit we are, we may still be infected. Even if the infection is mild, the disease may also have long-term impacts on your health. Vaccination provides protection to ward off new strains of the virus. For the health of yourself and your family, and for the resumption of normal life, go for it. We will win by getting vaccinated together.
Time for our last look at sports. I'm Adam Zheng. The quarterfinal lineup at football's Euro 2020 is complete after wins for England and Ukraine. We start at Wembley Stadium, where England defeated their old rivals Germany 2-0 with second-half goals from Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane. The BBC's John Murray was at the game.
Gareth Southgate's team created more memories for a new generation with England's first win against a German team in a knockout match since 1966. In a closely fought match, goalkeeper Jordan Pickford's saves were vitally important as England built momentum and scored their goals in the last 15 minutes. Substitute Jack Grealish involved in both, as first Raheem Sterling, then Harry Kane converted from close range, to a cacophonous reaction from a crowd of almost 42,000. Crucially, in between the goals was a glaring miss by Germany's Thomas Muller, but England will now leave Wembley for Rome, having still yet to concede a goal in the tournament.
The Manchester City striker Raheem Sterling has been impressive for England up front. The goal he scored against Germany was his third in 4 games.
We knew we needed to put a big performance against a very good side, and I thought we'd done that today.
Of all the important goals you've scored
there as one of the most special as well?
Yeah, for sure. I said, doing it for your country is always would always be special, and it's definitely a special moment for me.
Talk me through the emotion when it hit the back of the net, because the boys ran over in celebration and you could just see what it meant to the whole team. Yeah,
I celebrated, and then for half a second I thought, let's let it not be offside. But yeah, I was just really happy it went in, and really happy we got the win.
Let's also hear from the England defender Harry Maguire, who was named man of the match.
We kept hearing things about they're not as good as they used to be, but they're a top team. They'll bounce back, and I'm sure they will, but they have great players, great structure. We've obviously changed our formation to match them up and try to be really aggressive out of the ball and go man for man as much as we can, and I felt like that worked. We didn't give them any rhythm or settle in the game, and yeah, I felt like for a large majority of the game we was in control of the game, and we know that we've got match winners in our team, and it's proven again.
In the last of the round of 16 matches, Ukraine defeated Sweden 2-1 in extra time to reach their first quarterfinals of a major tournament. The winning goal came from substitute Artem Dovbyk. The quarterfinal matches kick off late Friday night Hong Kong time. Spain versus Switzerland is followed by Belgium versus Italy. Denmark play the Czech Republic late Saturday night, and in the early hours of Sunday, England play Ukraine in Rome. Next to tennis, Serena Williams is out of Wimbledon after twisting her ankle in a first-round match against Alexandra Sesnovich. On the men's side, Roger Federer is through to the second round, but only after an injury to his opponent. The BBC's Chris Dennis has more.
Serena walked onto centre court wearing another eye-catching outfit to start her quest for that elusive 24th Grand Slam title. She left the court barely 45 minutes later in tears, her hopes in tatters after slipping awkwardly during the first set. Huge disappointment for Williams, her team and the centre court crowd. Federer's match a little earlier was also decided by an injury. The Swiss hadn't lost in the opening round of a Grand Slam for 18 years. But at 2-1 down to the Frenchman Adrien Manarino and struggling to find his touch, people were thinking the unthinkable. But then midway through the fourth set, Manarino slipped and twisted his knee before retiring at the start of the fifth. Heartache for the Frenchman, relief for Federer.
The women's world number one Ash Barty held off Carla Suarez Navarro to reach the second round of Wimbledon. Barty fought back from a rocky second set to win 6-1, 6-7, 6-1. And that's your look at sports.
Thanks, Atom. Before we go today, the weather forecast. Sunny intervals with a few showers. Highs expected today of around 32 degrees. Winds moderate southwesterlies, occasionally fresh offshore. Forecasters say there will be a few showers and sunny intervals in the next couple of days. Right now, it's 30 degrees, relative humidity 81%.